Every day, millions of parents across the country face the same struggle, trying to pack healthy, fun, and satisfying lunches for their kids that will actually get eaten, not end up in the trash or traded away. Studies have shown that nearly 60% of parents find themselves stressed or frustrated by the task of packing a nutritious meal that their child won't dread. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, reports that only 27% of kids eat the recommended daily servings of fruits and vegetables, and that number drops even lower when it comes to school lunches. For me, these statistics hit home hard, reminding me of my own painful journey of trying to break free from the endless cycle of rejected lunches, tantrums, and disappointed glances. I used to start every morning in a hopeful rush, determined that this day would be the day I finally got it right. I'd spend precious minutes chopping, mixing, wrapping, only to see those carefully prepared meals come back untouched. I can still see the image, vividly etched in my mind, of opening my child's lunchbox at the end of the day, only to find it just as full as it had been when I packed it that morning. My heart would sink each time as I thought about the nutrients he missed out on, the time I'd wasted, and the guilt that gnawed at me. Was I somehow failing him? It got to a point where, each evening, I'd sit at the kitchen table, lunchbox contents strewn across the counter, trying to hold back tears. I had tried everything. Cute little bento boxes, colorful fruit slices, quirky food shapes. Nothing worked. I felt powerless, inadequate, and more alone than I'd ever felt. Parenting is full of challenges, but somehow this one felt like a test I was destined to fail. The worst part was the anxiety it caused. Each night, after finally wrestling the kids to bed, my mind would start spinning over what to pack the next day. I'd scroll through countless Pinterest boards, watching video tutorials, and reading ultimate lunch guides, desperate for a solution. But in the end, the stress always returned, leaving me in a fog of worry and self-doubt. I began to question myself in every way. Why couldn't I get it right? Was there something wrong with my child? Or was it me? I remember one morning particularly well. I'd stayed up late the night before, meticulously planning a lunch that I thought he'd enjoy. Whole grain crackers, cheese slices shaped like little stars, fresh apple slices, and a small cup of hummus. I packed it all up with a hopeful heart, feeling that maybe I'd finally cracked the code. But when he got home, I found every single piece untouched, as if I hadn't spent those precious minutes crafting it with love. It felt like a slap to the face, a rejection that ran deeper than just a skipped meal. It felt like my best wasn't enough, and I didn't know how to give more. The worry started to seep into other parts of my life. At work, my mind would wander to the lunch I'd packed, wondering if he'd even taken a bite. I'd watch other parents with their perfectly packed, Instagram-ready meals, and the shame crept in. I felt alone, convinced that everyone else had it all figured out while I was drowning. In grocery store aisles, I would second-guess every choice, weighing each item's appeal and wondering, will he eat this, or will it come back untouched? This tiny battle over lunchboxes became a constant background noise in my life, an invisible burden I carried every day. The smallest mistakes would unravel me. I found myself snapping at him over trivial things, even as guilt clawed at me. I didn't want him to see me as the mean mom, but each day of packing those lunches chipped away at my patience. The emotional toll was heavier than I'd imagined it could be, and in the darkest moments I began to feel trapped. And then came the night that broke me. It was a rainy Tuesday. I remember sitting at the table, staring at a half-packed lunch, feeling utterly defeated. I held a tiny sandwich in my hands, shaped like a heart, hoping he'd find some joy in it. My vision blurred as the tears came, and I slumped over the kitchen counter, exhausted and lost. In that moment, I felt more alone than ever, convinced that this daily ritual was turning into an endless struggle, one that no one seemed to understand. Packing a simple lunch was never supposed to feel this hard, this overwhelming, but here I was. After that rainy Tuesday, something shifted inside me. I was exhausted from the cycle of worry and disappointment, and I knew I couldn't keep this up. There was a deep ache in my heart, an understanding that things couldn't go on this way. So I promised myself that I would take small, actionable steps to transform this overwhelming lunchbox ordeal into something manageable and maybe even enjoyable. The first thing I realized was that I needed to redefine my expectations. I started small by accepting that not every lunch needed to be picture-perfect or packed with superfoods. Instead of focusing on perfect lunches that I thought would impress, I decided to focus on approachable lunches, ones that wouldn't feel intimidating to my child or me. I shifted my goal from making an ideal lunch to making a balanced lunch, aiming for foods that would nourish him and fit his preferences. This mindset change felt simple but powerful. The next step was discovering which foods my child actually really enjoyed. I tried to pay closer attention to his reactions to different snacks and meals, finding patterns and paying attention to his favorite textures and flavors. We took trips to the grocery store together, and I let him explore options. To my surprise, he gravitated towards simple foods, plain yogurt, carrots, small whole grain crackers, items that I'd never even considered because they weren't cute enough for lunchbox photos. I soon realized that these choices made him feel included in the process. Even better, it simplified my life tremendously. By building the lunches around foods I knew he'd like, I started to notice that fewer items were coming back untouched. I also found that preparing and packing lunches could be easier if I worked ahead of time. Batch prepping snacks was a huge revelation. On Sundays, I'd spend an hour cutting up fruit, portioning out yogurt, and preparing veggie sticks. The organization felt like a gift to myself, and my mornings suddenly felt lighter and less stressful. Instead of frantically trying to assemble something last minute, I had options ready to go. By planning and preparing in advance, I saved myself from the morning scramble, and I found more mental space to approach the day calmly. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when I stopped focusing only on what was in the lunchbox and started thinking about the overall experience. I created a lunchbox routine that included little love note on napkins or tiny surprises like a small sticker or an encouraging word. It made packing lunches feel less like a chore and more like an opportunity to connect with my child, even when he was miles away at school. These notes were simple but full of love, and he'd sometimes bring them back to me, telling me how much he enjoyed them. The experience felt more meaningful for both of us, creating a bond that transformed the entire process. I also learned that balancing food groups didn't need to be complicated. I used a simple approach, including at least one protein, one whole grain, and a fruit or veggie in every lunch. Suddenly, I had a plan that felt manageable and doable. If he didn't eat every item, I knew he was still getting a mix of nutrients, which gave me peace of mind. Including a small treat became an easy way to add joy to his lunchbox, reminding him that healthy eating could be fun and balanced. Seeking support from other parents was another step that changed everything. I joined an online community focused on healthy, kid-friendly lunches, where I could ask questions and share ideas. Learning from other parents' experiences helped me discover strategies I wouldn't have thought of alone. Hearing about their struggles made me feel less isolated, and every shared story or photo became a source of inspiration. I learned that I wasn't alone, that there were countless parents facing the same challenges. Knowing that others were on the same journey lightened my load. When I felt lost or unsure, I started turning to resources that helped me discover new ideas. I came across a variety of digital tools like meal planning apps specifically designed for family meals. These tools offered suggestions, meal ideas, and templates that made my life easier and helped me develop a variety of options my child enjoyed. They provided ideas for protein-rich lunches, easy vegetable additions, and even ways to prepare allergen-free options that worked well for my child's needs. Finally, I came across the Lunchbox Liberation. Packing healthy and fun lunches kids will love. The insights in this book transformed everything. It offered practical, realistic strategies that felt like they were written just for me. The tips were clear, simple to apply, and easy to fit into my daily routine. I found sections on balancing nutrition, encouraging picky eaters, and even creative packing ideas that turned lunches into a fun experience. The book helped me break free from the pressure and allowed me to create healthy lunches that my child enjoyed without feeling overwhelmed. If you're facing the same struggle, I can't recommend it enough. You can grab a digital copy at libriffy.com, link in the description, and take that first step toward making lunch packing a joyful, stress-free part of your day. After that rainy Tuesday, something shifted deep inside me. I was exhausted from the cycle of worry and disappointment, and I knew I couldn't keep this up. I understood in my core that things needed to change, so I promised myself I'd take the smallest steps necessary to shift this lunch packing struggle into something I could handle, and maybe even find a way to enjoy. The first thing I realized was that I needed to redefine my expectations. I was holding myself to this invisible standard, where every lunch had to be perfectly balanced, look creative, and somehow meet my child's whims without fail. I kept telling myself you don't have to pack perfect lunches, and instead I made it my goal to just pack meals that were balanced. Lunch didn't need to be picture perfect or trendy. It just needed to be nutritious, satisfying, and approachable. I shifted my goal from perfect to practical, and this subtle change felt like taking a weight off my chest. I gave myself permission to aim for variety instead of culinary magic. The next step was discovering which foods my child actually liked. Not just sometimes liked, but consistently enjoyed. I began paying closer attention to his reactions, taking mental notes of what disappeared and what came back untouched. I started to notice he preferred a few specific flavors and textures. I'd been missing some basics, focusing so much on the wow factor that I overlooked the fact that he actually preferred simple items. I'd spent months on cute little sandwiches and intricate fruit carvings, while he gravitated toward plain yogurt, carrots, whole grain crackers, and apples. I hadn't thought of these foods because they weren't exciting enough, but those small changes had a surprisingly positive effect. Another powerful change came when I let him participate in the planning process. Grocery shopping became an exploration for us. I allowed him to pick out 1 or 2 snacks each week that interested him. It was amazing how something as small as including him in these decisions shifted his attitude. The excitement he had over his chosen snack made packing lunches less of a fight. I started feeling more confident because I knew that what I was sending would at least capture his attention. As I got more comfortable, I found batch prepping snacks on Sundays made a big difference. I carved out an hour each weekend to wash and cut up fruits, chop veggies, and make small snack bags. I portioned out trail mix, hard-boiled eggs, and other foods into little containers. This felt like giving myself a gift. Mornings became lighter, less rushed. Instead of a frantic scramble, I could take a few ready-made containers, add them to the lunchbox, and know he'd have something balanced and appealing. I also started a new habit of making a fun note to tuck in his lunchbox. It could be something as simple as a heart on a napkin or a little doodle, but that added moment of connection helped make the lunchbox less about food and more about us. These notes made lunch feel like an experience, not just another meal. Sometimes he'd come home with the note, smiling, and share how it made him laugh or feel happy. Knowing he was carrying that small connection with him through the day was incredibly meaningful. Over time, I also found that the key to a balanced lunch didn't need to be complicated. I adopted a straightforward approach. 1 protein, 1 whole grain, 1 fruit, and 1 veggie. It made planning simpler. And I knew he'd have a mix of nutrients even if he didn't finish every single item. I realized that some flexibility was okay too. Instead of fighting over eating every carrot, I could give him a variety and let him decide what he wanted. Adding a small treat, a mini cookie or a bite-sized chocolate, became a way to add joy and remind him that healthy eating didn't have to be restrictive. Support from other parents was another turning point. I joined a group online that focused on packing healthy lunches, and suddenly I didn't feel so isolated. Reading other parents' struggles helped me recognize that I wasn't failing. I was just learning. They shared meal prep tips, snack ideas, and lunchbox hacks, and every new idea felt like a piece of the puzzle. Their stories gave me the courage to try different things without worrying about perfection. Learning from their experiences, seeing photos of their lunches, and hearing about their kids' reactions lifted a weight from my shoulders. Another change came when I discovered meal planning apps specifically designed for families. These tools offered suggestions and ideas that saved me time and mental energy. They gave me easy templates and plans I could follow, with options for protein-rich lunches, dairy-free and gluten-free ideas, and veggie-focused options that fit my child's preferences. Instead of searching aimlessly, I had a variety of ideas at my fingertips. These digital resources helped me establish a rhythm that took the guesswork out of lunch packing. As the school year went on, I started to see the results. Lunches that used to come home untouched were now mostly eaten. My son started mentioning foods he enjoyed and even shared some of his new favorites with his friends. I wasn't just packing a lunch, I was making meals that connected us. I no longer felt like I was constantly failing. I was building a foundation for healthy eating habits, and the difference it made in our relationship was profound. One day, I came across a book titled The Lunchbox Liberation. Packing healthy and fun lunches kids will love. This book was full of practical strategies that felt tailored to my needs. I found sections that helped me understand how to create lunches that balanced health and taste. There were ideas for engaging picky eaters and tips on creative ways to introduce new foods. Each chapter was packed with insights that changed how I approached lunch packing. Thanks to this book, I finally found a balance that allowed me to create healthy lunches my child genuinely enjoyed, without the stress. If you're going through a similar struggle, I highly recommend checking out this book. You can get a digital copy at libraryffy.com, link in the description. It's helped me so much, and I believe it could make a difference for you too.